What's up, everybody? So we're here to talk about the USMNT roster drop. I know my co-host Austin's joining here shortly, but we are excited. There's obviously some good, some bad, but just to finally watch it on TV, right, in New York City and Brooklyn, and seeing some of the guys up to the podium, actually seeing that roster put out there. There's been so many rumors and uh, sources saying this and that in circulation, right? And just anticipation, honestly, for this drop. So it's kind of a relief, right? We can all take a deep breath, whether it's, some folks might be angry in certain selections or omissions. Some might be just excited, right? Finally getting this roster and seeing what the US can do for the World Cup. So I think initially, there are a few names which we'll get into really caught me off guard, either part of the roster and then some missing. But now that I've had a few hours to collect myself a little bit, I think just more the excitement, anticipation of the World Cup in Qatar is setting in for me. It is what it is. We have Greg Berhalter as our coach. These are the decisions he's made. He has to live with them, right? And we'll see how far the U.S. can go. But again, I'm excited to dive in here. Roster, kind of go through position group by position group. And then, of course, I want to get, all of your reactions here, right? So make sure you're in the chat there. You're getting other folks to join the live stream, and I'm excited to dive in here with you guys. So I guess just the first point, as we're waiting for my guy Austin to join here, what's different about this roster, right? From a 23 to a 26-man roster, so you had a few additional players to add in, right? And it's interesting Berhalter's selections, to be honest with you. I guess some of the notable omissions, I think you would say, obviously, Zach Steffen, right? From a goalkeeper standpoint, which we'll get into reasons there. Some missing names, Mark McKenzie, Eric Palmer-Brown from a center back standpoint. And then you have other players that were kind of on the fringe there, but on the outside looking in, Mihalovic, Cardoso, and then some shock emissions like Pepe and Pifak up top. Malik Tillman, you could throw in that category as well. He's kind of fallen off a little bit in terms of form for Rangers, but still, if you look at his transfer over, from Munich, his initial start with Rangers, getting involved, integrated with the team there, you can make a case for him being on this roster, absolutely, especially over some of the players that Berhalter elected to go with. So just an interesting article, and I'm looking through here all of the sources coming out here, right? The news, the press releases, right? And something interesting Berhalter said in a quote after his reasoning for selecting certain players. There's a difference between qualifying in CONCACAF and playing in the World Cup. I'm just reading an article here off CBS Sports here. So obviously, quote, simple and obvious, true, but completely different tournaments. But it's just interesting in terms of, being a reason why some players were added and some were omitted. And he also went on to say, and this is Berhalter, I think it's important that we go over to Qatar and we represent our identity as a team. It's not time to change who we are. We're an aggressive team, a high-pressing team. We want to use the ball, and we're going to find out if we can be successful doing it. So, yeah, I think that's interesting, right? It's showing he's not shying away from the style that he's trying to implement and change the perception of the world how U.S. soccer plays. However, playing in that way with, said Aaron Long potentially starting does concern me. So, of course, we'll get into that a little bit more, but I just found those quotes to be interesting. But here's my esteemed co-host, my guy, Austin Van Truen, ABT. How you doing tonight? How you feeling?
I'm doing well. What's up, Pat? Sorry I'm tardy to the party, but
no, we're just getting started here. A little intro, just reading some quotes off of that Berhalter mentioned reason for some of his selections, just going through, I think, CBS Sports and some other news sites. So it's interesting to hear some of his words, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well, and everyone here tuning in. But Austin, just a quick summation. He essentially said there's a difference between qualifying in CONCACAF and playing in the World Cup in terms of player selection. He also mentioned, that here. Let me pull it up here. So I think it's important that we go over to Qatar and we represent our identity as a team. It's not time to change who we are. We're an aggressive team, a high pressing team. We want to use the ball, and we're going to find out if we can be successful doing it. Which is, not backing down from his style, but I was mentioning here before you jumped in that concerns me in terms of some of the players admitted and some brought in, especially from a defensive perspective. Rhymes with gong. I don't know. How are you feeling about the, Berhalter's, words there? In terms of some of the players he selected, what are your thoughts? I want to hear from, and you guys in the chats too, but Austin.
Yeah, I was going to say off the top, I don't think there's any, I think there was one surprise, but I don't think there was any major surprises from, the players that Berhalter selected. I think when you look at the players that maybe we didn't want to see there, I think a lot of them are fringe players, right? I do think that center back position is the one area where no matter who we selected, I think we're going to be, in some trouble here. It's unfortunate with just some of the injuries that have happened, Miles Robinson, Chris Richards, and, the other situation with John Brooks and his club status right now. It's obviously not in the position it was 12 months ago. And he's not necessarily in the same position that he was in 12 months ago. But all things aside, I think, I think a lot of the comments that Berhalter made, after the roster was announced, were pretty typical, right? This is definitely Berhalter sticking to, the same, I guess, style he's managed this team in, right? Like he's really stuck with the players that he believes in, with this roster call up. And I think time will tell if that works out. But at the end of the day, I think, and maybe zooming out a little bit more, right? This World Cup's about the players, going to the World Cup, I think a lot more than Greg Berhalter. And at the end of the day, we have some superstars that are going to be on the field, right? And Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Brandon Aronson, who's really just, coming into his own. So I really think, the onus is on those guys to kind of band together, step up here, and maybe take away some of that heat from Greg.
Right. And I think that's really important. And before you mentioned something really interesting there. But I do want to say, like you mentioned, Greg really does answer everything. I'm not surprised, like a politician. His answers are so just neutral. But anyway, you mentioned kind of zooming out and stepping back for a second. And I think that's important, right? Because you can be overly critical. And I even mentioned when I jumped on here, maybe immediate reaction 5-10 minutes after, I was like, what the heck, after we were talking on the phone. But then had a few hours to collect myself a little bit, and I'm more excited. I'm kind of like just anxious for the games to get started, the tournament to start. I'm excited, like you said, for these guys to really prove that they can, perform on an elite level, and not to focus on the negatives and Berhalter, right, and the tactics that we've been battling back and forth, but some magical moments, right, like a McKennie set piece at the end of the game, or a driving Gio Reyna slalom and run, or a signature Pulisic finish, or Weah, just terrorizing defenders, just moments like that. I'm excited to see these guys have that chance to step up and prove it on the international stage. I don't know. I really do feel like we're going to prove a lot of people wrong. And again, maybe that doesn't end with us getting to the semis or quarters, but I think, against England, against Wales, Iran, I think we can really shock some people. So I really like how you mentioned kind of zooming out for a second. And of course, we are going to be critical, right? We're going to get into the roster selections. But overall consensus, seeing that roster, Austin, after such a terrible flashback to Cuba and just not having any of these experiences, I was excited to see that recap in Brooklyn, right? Some of the players going on stage, the calls that Berhalter had, those Zoom calls and FaceTimes. It's just really excitement around that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm going. I think coming away from this, roster announcement today, I think it was just cool to see it again, right? We haven't had something like this since 2014, and obviously, thinking back, I was actually talking to a coworker today about the whole Landon Donovan situation, right? When he wasn't called up by Jurgen, and how big of a deal we thought that was back then, and some of the decisions today, which I know we'll get into, were somewhat similar, I guess, and. I think it's just at the end of the day, it's good to see us back, in the World Cup, and I'm, excited that we're going to see our team play in 11 days, right, or 12 days here. So,
is it that 21st? Close? That's unbelievable. I can't believe it's already November 9th.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. You want to read this comment by Kyle here?
Yeah. I want to put some comments, and Kyle, appreciate the chat here. So again, and we're certainly kind of going position by position, but of course we'll get off top. We'll go out of sorts there, right, and out of order, I mean, and address any questions here because it's pertinent. It's all pertinent. But Kyle mentioned, I think everyone is misreading why Greg brought Moore. Shaq can play center back and left, so he's useful on both sides and can play the 3-man back line on the right. Positive, he started as a center back in the U20s. So that's interesting. I kind of forgot that piece. And I think my initial reaction when I saw Shaq Moore's name there and then him on stage, I was like, huh? I'll be honest.
I thought of Pat. I thought of you, man. So, all the times we covered him in Spain, I was like, from the yes.
locker rooms in the second and third tiers of Spain to going to, hey, you know what? I'm happy for him. I am. And I will say, from my limited view of Nashville, he seemed to really find a home there, starting consistently, getting fairly good from FootMob ratings, 6.87 above Zimmerman partnership there. And Nashville, obviously, they exited the playoffs early, but they had a push there. They had a much stronger push there to even get into that playoff contention. So from that end, if you're looking at who was left out, you could argue, okay, maybe Reggie Cannon, right? That seems to be the direct comparison a lot of people are making. I don't really see a huge problem stepping back. Like, there's not a strong, overwhelming sense in me to say, oh, Cannon was robbed. He's way better than Shaq Moore. But at the same time, I could see how some people are surprised, with other options. So I'll throw it to the chat, of course. And then Austin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, Shaq Moore, had a great Gold Cup, right? Going on 2 years ago now. And I feel like that was really the first time we got to see him succeed in a USMNT shirt. And obviously since then got some extra minutes throughout the year. I think he was called into action when we had an injury, right, at the right back position, a few camps ago. And yeah, he was one of those players. I feel like anytime he was asked upon, called upon, basically he delivered. And again, you're looking at someone who I think, like Kyle said, has some flexibility in his game, right? He can potentially serve as a backup center back, which again, I hope we don't get in that situation for multiple reasons. But he's also someone that I think you could throw into a game in a situation and trust that he'll be able to perform to the his highest level. And I think if he performs to his highest level, he's someone that's serviceable as a right back in a World Cup setting. I think that's maybe a little bit more than what you could say with Reggie Cannon right now. Kind of like you alluded to, Pat. We haven't seen too much of him personally in Portugal, so it's hard to really say how well he's playing at the moment. But I don't know. You could make the argument, right, that the level of play that he's playing over there in Portugal is maybe somewhat similar to what Shaq Moore is playing in MLS, that same level. So yeah, exactly. I overall I didn't hate it. Yeah, it was good to see.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think what's interesting, and I don't even know if this is really a hot take, but I would say for some of it, when you mentioned obviously Gold Cup, and then Shaq Moore came in from an injury there, and it called remember that the last second, just kind of for the second part of some games there. He, for some reason, and I get Yedlin's the veteran, right, of the group, I almost trust Shaq Moore's play more than Yedlin at this point in time. I'll be honest. Yedlin's terrible at closing down defenders. He gets burned bad. After 30 minutes, it seems like he goes down with leg problems or cramps. Again, I'm not saying, this is like, dead set, right? Shaq 100% over Yedlin, but I think you could also make the case, right? In terms of skill and ability, do you really feel that much more confidence in Yedlin? Shaq Moore strikes me as someone that's not going to overwhelm you or pizzazzy, right? Get up the flanks. But someone that's kind of just, reliable, like that B minus, like, okay, it'll work, right, in certain scenarios. And I don't know. I've seen some pretty shaky stuff from Yedlin right now after that Newcastle, right, and just kind of heading back to where his trajectory has really dropped.
Well, the one thing he does add to the team that no one else adds is World Cup experience, right? So, I think that counts for something, especially with DeAndre Yedlin. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens if there's ever a time where Serginho Dest is not our starting right back, which could happen, right? He has been somewhat injury prone in the past, and maybe there's a matchup where we think that one of these guys is better. So it'll be interesting to see, Greg Berhalter and what his decisions are. But what do you think about the center backs, Pat? I know we had a lot of debate going in. I still had hope for my guy John Brooks by some grace of God, some miracle.
Austin. I'm sorry. There were some points of me. I was almost going to jump back on the hill with you, and I do have to respect you for staying on that hill for so long and just continue.
I was hoping, man. So many injuries, so much bad play.
You got on that hill, but now it's Qatar, so it's all good. Center backs, Austin, too. And just to read it aloud, just from a whole, and just the defenders, right? I'll just kind of go through the entire list. But CCV, right? Celtic called in center back. Aaron Long, no surprise there, right? We've seen him a lot, unfortunately, but it's a part of this team, right? He was also in the Camp Cupcake here, along with Shaq there. But we have Tim Ream, who we heard some sources and rumors online. I never know the validity to them, but hey, it looks like some folks were right about that. So Tim Ream back in the fold,
and a player we projected in our most recent episode.
That's right. So. I kind of feel like a relief, right? I was like, wow, we just put that episode. If you haven't watched it with Eyes and Vibes podcast, go to our YouTube channel. It's fantastic kind of debates there. It's group stage prediction as well, and starting 11s.
It was a fun one. Yeah.
So it's great to see him kind of validate our episode, because if he wasn't on that, it would have looked not great. But yeah, so I think, and then Walker Zimmerman from a center back standpoint. So really there's only four, Austin. And I guess maybe if you want to put Shaq Moore and move him around, but aside from that, from the other, outside backs, the full backs, you have Anthony Robinson, no surprise. DeAndre Yedlin, which you talked about, Shaq Moore, Serginho Dest, right? And then Joe Scally. So that one I was, maybe you could say a month or two ago, surprised on, but I wasn't so surprised that he was in there, at this point. He's been doing pretty well. So how about you? How are you feeling about the rest of our defenders, the center backs, and then, any other, call-ups from the outside back?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing with center back, we kind of alluded to it earlier. There's no great choice right now. I feel like there's a lot of options, but no resounding options. So the thing that surprised me with Greg Berhalter's decision was only to bring 4 center backs, right? And obviously Shaq Moore is kind of the extra reserve outside back, and maybe he can slot in and play center back. But I honestly probably would have taken a 5th center back just based on form. Again, based on our injury concerns going into the World Cup. Aaron Long came off a lengthy injury. Again, with some of these guys, we haven't gotten too much playing time, in the national team, right? Like Tim Ream hasn't been called in since 2021. Cameron Carter-Vickers has gotten some time recently, but again, one of those players that probably doesn't have too much continuity with the team that he's going to be playing with. And, so basically I say that to say, I would have loved to see someone like Mark McKenzie get called up, or maybe Eric Palmer-Brown as just a 5th center back option, someone that could be thrown into the fire if things really just, do not go our way, right? Like if
Oh
we
yeah.
lose 5-0 to England or something. Like I don't know. I just feel like we should have maybe had some more cover at that position rather than an extra outside back, especially with Joe Scally's ability to play both right and left back. I don't know. I kind of thought of him as, that player that could kind of cover both in a pinch. Obviously, Dest could kind of do the same too. So I don't know. It just seemed a little redundant having 3 right backs on this roster.
I completely agree. And especially with the extra spaces, right? I mentioned at the beginning, 23 to 26, man.
Yeah.
And let's just say, like you said, Long has had some injury problems in the past. He's been terribly out of form. And I do not want to jinx anybody, right? But let's just say it's a quick period of time. Even some of these MLS guys, right, haven't had, especially the European guys, but the recovery is not what it's usually been. In the World Cup when you have the summer to kind of brace and get ready. More players are going to go down, unfortunately. That's just what's going to happen here. So let's just say, right, you have, I assume, Greg Berhalter. You have Walker and Long starting. Maybe Ream Walker. I don't know. Who knows? But if one of the other guys goes down, I'm not saying I don't trust CCV, and the others, but you really limit yourself. Especially for rotation, if there are 1 or 2 guys goes down, do you really have that trustworthy guy? And even shifting some of those other guys into play in a back 3, do you really trust that sense? So I think I would have loved to see either Mark or EPB, that extra one added as opposed to that 3 right backs, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah. And yeah, I think, again, we've harped on it so much now, but center back is going to be our biggest weakness, I think, going into this World Cup. And we'll see. Hopefully we can, find some solutions before 2026.
Exactly. I do want to pivot back awesome goalkeepers. Interesting.
Oh, yes.
My boy. Oh shoot, where's my card? It's in my bedroom there. But I have my Ethan Horvath card. You got me. Shout out to ABT. You with that card. I'm happy he made the roster. I was a little concerned. I was hearing him as kind of that 4th man out. But I'm happy to see him on. I think he's been doing very well for Luton Town. Obviously, we know Matt Turner. Hopefully, the injury isn't that bad, but it's still concerning. It looks like Greg hasn't ruled him as the instant starter for the game, depending on how he recovers. I hope it's a speedy recovery for him. It doesn't sound too bad. But Austin, Sean Johnson as well. So who does that leave us out? Are you surprised?
Zach Steffen. Yeah, I was surprised personally, and I think this one was leaked last night. So again, I was shocked when I heard it last night rather than when I heard it on the broadcast today. But yeah, I don't know. So I think we talked about this on the call we had earlier today too. Like, part of me is not glad or happy that he's not on this roster, but I really think he needed a wake-up call. And I don't want to be too harsh with it, but I just think recently there's been kind of a sliding of performances from him. And I don't know. I just think this could be, something that kind of resonates with him, that he needs to maybe be more intentional with his situation at the club level. Again, I think, going to Man City definitely helped him in some aspects, but I also think he kind of maybe lost some of the drive that we saw from him, let's say when he was at Columbus, and maybe when he first made that move to City, and was trying to cut his teeth in the Bundesliga for a little bit.
Right.
And I don't know. I just think his level of performance has dropped a little bit. Obviously, he's been dealing with some injuries. So again, I think that's the caveat to all of what I'm saying. And that's something that you can't necessarily prevent, but maybe you can work harder, or work in a different way to kind of come back and make the most of the time when you're out. And I just think, yeah, it's harsh, right? Like, I think he could be on this roster, but to be honest, like, he just hasn't really been up to the level, and he hasn't necessarily gotten as consistent of game time as someone like Ethan Horvath, who has stepped into the starting lineup this year. Sean Johnson obviously has gotten a lot of playing time and has looked good in MLS. So yeah, it's tough. again, I think, Turner needs to be the starter here. Like, I'm hoping we don't see the other two keepers. No offense, Pat, but
No,
yeah,
completely
leaving him off is
understand.
a tough move. Yeah.
Completely understand. And just some more comments here. KCV, saying I appreciate you guys joining us. And KCV, yeah, it's been a while, and nice to unwind, right? Unfortunately, uni sucked, right? But hey, you got midterms, but just look ahead to Qatar, the World Cup. Get pumped here. We got the roster
Listen,
drop,
2 weeks.
obviously. Yeah, 2 weeks away. So I hope you don't have any classes then, or if you do, you can just have the game on the side. But yeah, I think Austin. Um, Also, I think a few other comments here from in terms of Stefan. Casey, you mentioned Shock
Yeah.
Zach to make it. To me, he's better than Johnson. And then Sam, our guy Sam Cuts there. Stefan is good for a gaff a game. I think those are those pretty fair comments. I'll be honest. I think I was initially shocked to not see him there. I thought Johnson would be left out, to be honest with you, but it's still such a toss up, right? It's not like we have that Tim Howard, right? Or
Yep.
to that level. We just don't. That's the situation we're in. Obviously, it's great to see Turner working himself up. Arsenal hopefully gets healthy, but he had a good run the Europa League. Made that huge move. But yeah, like you mentioned, Stefan. Hopefully, this lights that fuel. I think he mentioned it on our phone call earlier. That kind of fueled his fire to kind of reignite his passion, because he was Berhalter's guy, right?
Yeah,
The whole
he
part,
was.
early part
Yeah.
of the qualifying, he was the guy, and it almost seemed like Turner kind of like New England Revolution playing tremendously, but kind of came out of nowhere in terms of USMNT picture and just swooped right in, and we've just seen so like just volatile like it's like the crypto market here. Stefan's performance.
Yeah,
Just
it's very true.
up and down, and hopefully this kind of motivates him. I know it's probably brutal to hear now for the next few days, but hopefully he can really turn around Middlesbrough, get them back up promoted. And actually, I don't know if that's possible. They're pretty far down there.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say I'm not sure about that one.
yeah, wishful thinking. But yeah, I think like Sam mentioned here, a long-term drive for Stefan, and even Pepe, which we'll get to, Austin.
Yeah.
So midfielders. What are your thoughts there? I don't think there are too many surprises from a midfield perspective. And I can read you go down the list here for you, but I want to get your take,
Sure.
Austin. Brendan Aronson, listed as a midfielder here, but we know he's been played as a winger. Kellen Acosta, who just won for LAFC. What an exciting final. I do have to say on that, even though the poor Philadelphia Union. Tyler Adams. And then you have Luca de la Torre, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, and Christian Roldan, the vibes guy, made it. Awesome. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Only 7 midfielders. I think that was something that surprised me a little bit. I thought maybe we would go with like 8 or 9. But when you look at the players that would have been called up, or the players that were kind of in that last group with Greg Berhalter, we haven't had too many different midfielders in camp recently. So I feel like that pool was very small to begin with. And yeah, I think the one omission that would have been great to see, whether it was a midfielder or forward, was Malik Tillman. Just scored today for Rangers. Player that's really exciting and I think could be an impact sub, maybe in some of our games. Just again, from some of the form he's had this year, what he brings to the pitch as well, I think is a little bit different than some of the players that, maybe we have in this list here.
So you think he could offer something like certain game scenario compared to some of these other fringe guys that we have? You think he could be a little bit more dynamic than some of these other guys?
I think so personally. I it's tough to say, but I really think he offers something that's, more in line with a Brendan Aronson than obviously a Christian Roldan or even like Gio Reyna. Like Gio Reyna has some fantastic skills, and I'm not sitting here saying, he's a better player than Gio Reyna, but I think he's a little bit more shifty. I don't know. I just think he's more of that like attacking minded midfielder, where some of our other players are either more defensive minded, right, or possession oriented, and maybe not as cutting in the final third or,
Right.
looking to take players on, I guess is also kind of what I'm trying to go at. So that was a player that I thought could have been of use to us. But again, we're talking about fringe players, right? Like our midfield is pretty established. Our rotation, I think, is going to be pretty similar to what we've seen so far.
Right.
And I think we have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Yeah, MMA, maybe throwing Brandon Aronson in the fold at some point during the World Cup, Gio Reyna even potentially. So yeah, I didn't think it was too crazy. The one player that again, and I just think it's based on how small this group's been towards the end of this cycle. But Luca De La Torre has just not gotten much game time this year for Celta Vigo. Again, I don't, he didn't look good in the two most recent friendly games. Again, like not many players did, so it's tough
And
to
he's been
really
hurt, Austin. We
make a
thought as soon as that
case.
injury came out, and then you saw him training in the fog recently, that
Yeah,
Celta Vigo put out on their their social media. But he is, yeah, like you said, kind of that down dip in form, lack of playing time, and then really tough injury. It
yeah,
sounds like though he's recovering at a fairly good timeline. But will be back right in time for the start of that first game.
right.
Obviously, you're not getting preparation regardless, but that is even less preparation. Now, obviously, he's not most likely isn't going to be a starter. Excuse me.
Right.
I don't know if you want somebody with that rust coming off the bench at the same time when he has been in form. He's able to against certain teams, right? Maybe not in England, but other teams. Maybe he can provide some of those creative drives forward, line breaking passes, a little bit of creativity in there. You can make that argument for him, right? Um, Especially with this group, he's kind of been around the camps now in chemistry. But I thought with that injury in the dip of form, he was going to be out.
Yeah, I don't know. He's played well at times, over the past year and a half. But I've never been one of those guys who's been like completely on his bandwagon. I think he provides some interesting qualities that maybe some of our other players don't have. When
Yeah.
you talk about again being good in possession and making good decisions, but I don't know. I'm still not selling him. So that was another player with the injury concerns that not surprised me, but I was just maybe not expecting to see him. But overall, I think this group is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. And just reading some of the comments here, Austin. KCD, only one was Roldan. Would
He's the
prefer not.
vibes guy, bro. He's got to be on the roster. Who
Yeah,
else is gonna fill that role?
I don't know. I guess that's the only reason why I don't see. I don't even remember the last time he played significant minutes in any meaningful game for the U.S.
So he's gonna, over under, I guess. Or what's your take, Pat? He's definitely gonna get minutes at the World Cup, right? Christian Roldan is gonna walk away with World Cup minutes, right?
Walk away with World Cup minute or minutes.
Minutes. This man's gonna
uh,
play in a game. Do you want to make a bet?
hey,
What do you guys think in the comments? Will Christian Roldan play a minute at the World Cup?
it really depends how it goes. Hey, I'd love to hear you guys.
I say yes. I think this man's going to get minutes. Some way Greg Berhalter will throw him a bone, but we'll see.
First two games, absolutely not. I don't think so.
You don't think he'll be
I
first sub
think
off the
I think
bench,
it's
man?
going to be the third game potentially where things might fall. Is where he
Oh,
sees.
man.
I, I'll bet he doesn't. I'll bet he doesn't see the pitch.
Sam says if we
Okay.
get a lead, then yes, he will be.
Yeah, I don't know. Austin, I don't know if there's some type of way he can just be a part of the group going over and be kind of that mentor or kind of just assign him some temporary coaching or
But what
some
is he
credential, right,
mentoring?
to get him part of the team. Like, don't waste your spot on him. But at the same time, you can make that case the last few are really not going to be, again, playing significant minutes or chunks. But to me, it just seems like a waste compared to other guys that you could have brought in. But he's been with the team so long. He has the vibes.
He's part of the group, man.
He's part of the group.
He's got a tattoo. I swear, all these great guys have tattoos that they're just hiding.
Anyway, enough on that. But
We're getting out in the
Kyle,
weeds.
Kyle Hicks, Austin. And I know we're kind of going a little bit off here, but just reading through the comments and we'll kind of funnel back and forth. But Switching over to some of the strikers, right, in the forwards. Can't believe Pepe got cut. He said, "Thanks for saving my job. Now here's the door." Right is a change of pace, but how similar is Pepe to Sargent? Seem different to me. Sargent is more of a tweener as a 9 and 7. So I think I'll speak to the first part. That was a huge shock to me. I think that was one of the biggest shocks you could
Massive
say.
shock. Yeah.
I would say the biggest shock of this roster. Pepe did save his job. You saw that Honduras game, right? They were down and out, down 1-0, and he had a tremendous run, a stretch of games. And then that move to Augsburg, which I think Gray kind of pushed him to do, right? That ended up being a brutal, just black hole, the Bermuda Triangle of football. Escapes, right? To Groningen, gets kind of that lifesaver, and has been killing it since. Now, maybe their WC, right, it's not as strong as his Bundesliga. It's maybe a little bit top heavy, but I think his body of work in qualifying, his vibes with the group, right? He's a vibes guy, I think. Has that camaraderie, that chemistry, and with the extra roster spots, instead of bringing all those right backs or overloading in certain areas, I think this would have been a great opportunity to bring somebody like that for the experience. And I think this, again, another guy who has a strong mentality. But I think compared to Stefan, this could really impact. This is pretty devastating from Ricardo's standpoint.
Yeah, I was shocked personally. Yeah, and I was in the camp that I thought he should have been our starting striker going into the first game against Wales. To be completely honest, we talked about it
Those were our
a lot last time. Yeah. And just, again, the options he provides, I think, who is it? Kyle here, in his final part of that comment said, Ray is a change of pace, but how similar is Pepe to Sargent seemed different to me. Sargent is more of a tweener as a 9 and 7. And that's the thing. I think, Josh Sargent's not necessarily your out and out, strong number 9, right? Like he's someone who likes to track back and defend, likes to move around a little bit, still is kind of finding, I guess, his role as a striker, right? I feel like he's, gotten in good form this year and has scored a lot of goals, but he's still, I feel like, trying to find his true way to play the game, which is fine. And I think he's going to help us in this World Cup. I think now especially he's going to have to help us.
Yeah.
And Jesus Ferreira is not that like out and out number 9 as well. Now Haji Wright is to some extent, but I also think Haji Wright doesn't have some of the qualities that Ricardo Pepi has, right? He's not as good in the air as Ricardo Pepi. And again, I don't think his runs are even as good as Ricardo Pepi at this point in his career. So yeah, I was shocked by it. I really thought Ricardo was our most complete striker going into this World Cup. And even if he wasn't, in Greg's mind, the out and out starter, I think he deserved a place on this team. And again, like you said, I think he's someone for the future. He's the future of our program at the striker position.
And just to see him cut like that, Austin, seems cool. It just
disrespectful. And
it's not even like, hey, like this is a pity. Like he's scoring now. He's doing fairly well, and he's being targeted to make that move up to maybe an Ajax or a PSV or kind of a top team in the Eredivisie potentially. Doesn't look like he's going back to Augsburg ever. Maybe to collect his belongings.
You believe the reports,
something. But no, and just to go through the attackers, right, while we're on it, I don't think I mentioned the rest of the forwards, right, the strikers and the wingers. We have Christian Pulisic, Jesus Ferreira, Jordan Morris, Giovanni Reina, Josh Sargent, Timo Weah, and Haji Wright. So, I'm still shocked with Pepi. Now, I think there were some initial thoughts where, okay, why is Haji in here as opposed to Pepi? I don't know if that was a direct comparison. It sounded like from Greg's comments, it was more between the physical presence between Pifak and Haji. Now, Pifak, we've made a case, right? He's done in the Swiss league. The Bundesliga started off hot. He has not scored. I think he's been scoreless in quite a few games, and Union Berlin has cooled off a bit. But Haji, I guess you could say in the year of 2022 has been in pretty good scorching form. But Greg roasted him after his dreadful appearance and took him off pretty early. I thought he was toast. I really did. I know he has some kind of that chemistry, right, with Pulisic hitting the guys from way back. But gosh, that was brutal. That was a brutal cameo and just kind of cool, maybe constructive feedback from Greg now that I'm thinking about it. But I thought he was toast. I did not see Haji Wright coming. But just to circle back, I don't think the Pepe Haji was the right comparison, right, in terms of taking one over the other. I think a different profile. I'm happy Sargent's on the roster. I think you and I are big Sargent fans. He's really improved physically, mentally. Just much more reassured in the final third. Even Pookie coming back for Norwich, right? He's shifted very well to the wing as well as being that lone nine. So he has that flexibility there. But I still think, again, instead of bringing some vibes guys or wasting spots on no offense to Shaq Moore or a certain case like that, I would have much rather taken Pepe over some of those guys. In my opinion, you have the extra capacity, right, to bring someone in like that.
Yeah, and it's just tough, and I don't think if you're talking about Pefok versus Haji Wright, like Haji Wright's not a physical presence as a striker.
No.
Yeah, if anyone's watched
Greg compared
games,
to,
like
not myself, but what Greg compared to.
I know, and that's concerning to me because none of these strikers are real physical presence. Like Josh Sargent does a lot of dirty work and can kind of bang around in the box, but he's not a big hulking striker. Again, not to say Ricardo Pepi is, but at least he's got some height to him, right? 6'3". Yeah, man, I'm so worried. And I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. Like, who's going to be our starting striker going into that Wales game? Like, is it going to be Jesus Ferreira? Is it going to be Josh Sargent? Like, I don't think it's Haji Wright, so it's got to be one of those two players. And I don't think we've seen enough good play from Jesus Ferreira, especially recently, with the national team, to give me a lot of confidence that we're going to score goals with him up top. And kind of the same with Josh Sargent. He's gotten some run recently with the national team. And obviously our last two games were terrible indicators of, what we're going to do at the World Cup if we play the way we did in those two games. But I'm really worried because I feel like once I feel like with Greg Berhalter, it's always plan A. It's always plan A. There's never a plan B. And I really feel like we're kind of, I don't know, we're kind of strapped right now with the strikers he called up. I feel like we don't really have too much variability with them. And again, not to say Ricardo Pepi would have given us everything we're asking for, but I just think his game's a little bit different than the other ones. And again, I think he's a younger player that's maybe brings a little different perspective than some of these other ones. But
right.
I don't know.
And it was just concerning from the limited cameos of Haji. And Pefok to a fault too. Like when they're not involved, they a liability. And especially against some of these elite World Cup teams where I could see Haji Wright getting swallowed up by some of the especially like in England, right? Or even Wales with some of their bigger center backs, right? Pulling him off the ball. You're really relying on our wingers and our midfielders to get the job done. And that's been concerning from World Cup qualifying, especially away. Now being in Qatar, right? Just haven't scored goals. And even his Ferreira, right? Most likely our starter up there. Poor playoff performance, right? When it really matters. For FC Dallas and even cooling off at the USMNT, right? He's not that 9. He's not that poacher. And
I just don't think he fits
things in play and almost more of a 10 capacity, you're dropping into like an attacking midfield sense, but I don't know. It is concerning, where are the goals going to come from,
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I think with Jesus Ferreira is we have so many players who are able to combine, in behind strikers, right? And I think the biggest thing we lack right now is just a poacher, someone who's able to finish runs in the box and just kind of when they're in the box, right? Whenever they get the ball, whether it's outside the box or something like that, they're able to shoot and make chances for themselves, basically. And I think we have so many players who can kind of combine with each other. And we
need a Taremi.
yeah, honestly, someone like that would be awesome. But I think that's what Ricardo Pepi will turn into, hopefully. So we'll see. But I don't know, man. It's Greg Berhalter again. I just think he wants to play. He just is so one-dimensional in his thinking, right? And he thinks that if he can game plan so well, right? Or if you can just,
I
create
know.
this game plan that, is so focused on us and what we think we're going to do to the opponent. It's going
That's
to
why I'm
work
very worried
masterfully.
about the first half of these games where we've been so
Yeah.
like this Wales game is so critical. We talk about it on our last episode, guys. If you haven't
Yeah.
checked it out, the preview episode with the Eyes and Vibes podcast. But like you said, he is very adamant, sticking to his plan and structure and how we're going to play. Which I respect, right? You don't want somebody to bend in certain scenarios, but you have to have that adaptability or flexibility where if things aren't going well, 10, 15 minutes in, what are you seeing? What can you change before it gets too out of hand, before going into half and addressing it? Because these World Cup teams this is the real deal now. You're not going to have that time, right, to prepare against a Honduras, no offense, or a Grenada or Trinidad type team. Like these are the best teams for qualifying, right? The regions. So again, I don't want to get too pessimistic. I'm still very optimistic. I believe in the players we have, but I'm wondering if there's going to be a point where the players rally together and you see them shift away from some of the game plan. I don't know if that's going to create too much chaos.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know how that would go over, but I don't disagree with you, Pat. I think at some point in
Like I'm
time,
saying, Pulisic, they're down 2-1 or something, right? And he says at halftime, "Hey guys, lead by
let's just stick
example."
with it. Let's just keep it going. Let's try it again.
He takes on some driving runs, breaks out of positions, geo slaloms, and then we kind of go from there. But
Yeah.
I'll just read some of the comments, right? And I appreciate everybody in the chat. Let us know your thoughts, how you're feeling, about the roster, about our chances in the group stage too. We can get into that, but I think Sam here mentioned he's happy for Haji, which I am too. It's a amazing story that he's had. Sam mentioned I think he's more skilled on the ball than PFOC and has better pace. PFOC has those glancing headers, but we do have Weston for that. And I think that's completely fair too. KCV should have been Pepe, Sargent, and PFOC and Haji. Yeah, I think that's certainly an interesting take as well. I just think Ferreira has been Greg's guy for some time. And unfortunately, it wasn't going to be left out. And then I'm going back here, I think. Oh, and we got another comment here from Hilo Bro there. Thanks for joining us here. Pepe is in form, makes no sense. He said great job, covered. Yeah, that's completely true there. Still really shocked about that. And guys, keep the comments coming in. So I appreciate all of your input and insight here and into how you're feeling. So starting striker, Austin, I think from my end, if we don't have Pepe, which was our take before in our prediction, what Greg's going to do is Ferreira. But I want to see against Wales, I want to see Josh Sargent. I want to see Josh against that, that Wales back line. I think he would, again, be able to drop in, but also, get in the end of some balls there. Combined with Pulisic and the rest of the guys pretty well. I don't know. I like Haji. I'm just wondering what scenario, what best game he would be best in. Maybe it is actually this game compared to in England. I think he would be horrible against England, to be honest. But I'm going Josh Sargent for this first game, Austin.
Yeah, that's what Sam says here. He says Sargent because he partners with Weah well. Still remember the France goal. He says, I think, we'll see something similar in this World Cup. So, yeah, I think, Josh Sargent has a lot more continuity. Well, maybe not more than Jesus Ferreira. I think they probably are both around the same amount of time spent with this team. But, yeah, I think he's maybe in a little bit better form. He's going to be, playing games most recently compared to Jesus Ferreira, who's, not been playing games for a few weeks now, which I think does make a difference coming in. Gucci Bra, Berhalter out, Pulisic in.
And then Austin, Sam, quickly not to interrupt you there, Pulisic would take too long to write his book. It would be Arena that would do that talk in the field.
There we go. Yeah. So I'm with you, Pat. I think Josh Sargent should get the nod, especially in game one versus Wales. And I think we kind of go from there and see what performances, he's able to put in. And again, for that England game, it's tough, right? Like who do you go with? Do you go with someone like Josh Sargent who maybe knows the players or the style a little
Right.
bit more, right? Playing in England, he's played a season in the Premier League. Jesus Ferrer hasn't necessarily gone up against players like that. Yeah, it's tough. And where does Haji Wright come in? Is he solely a substitute? Is he someone that maybe you go to if it doesn't work out in those first two games the way we're expecting? And maybe he gets a start at some point within these first three games. But all I know is I'm excited to watch the USMNT at a World Cup, and no matter what, we'll still be rooting for them and
That's right.
hoping that
Staying
we can get
positive.
some results.
Support the boys, Austin. I do want to, again, not to go on a negative tangent, but what shocked me was seeing Jordan Morris on here as a winger.
I don't know, man. I think Jordan Morris has a place in this team, as weird
You
as it
think
is
so?
to say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think he brings a little bit of experience. And I think he still has that attitude that he's not, he's a little unflappable where like no matter how much is said about him, he doesn't listen to any of it. He scored that crucial goal in World Cup qualifying to kind of help seal the deal for us. And I think he's also, I think he's someone who has a bit of that passion in him, and kind of plays with that on the field. And he might not be the most polished player, right? We know, he's not the most technically sound player. He offers a lot in terms of pace. Hasn't had the best season with Seattle, but again, has a lot of experience and success in MLS. So I don't know. I didn't hate it. I do think we have a lot of options up front, right? Brendan Aronson can even be deployed as a winger.
Right.
But yeah,
I was only looking
think,
from and I think I agree. I think you have some fair points. I just don't, and again, I know sometimes club to national, it doesn't translate, right? And Morris does seem like that, even after his injuries, right? A guy you want in the locker room, a guy that's kind of tough, right? Physical. I could see him being a good motivator. And he did score that crucial goal. But yeah, Seattle, him and rolled on to Seattle had one of their worst seasons in a while, and Morris is just he was pretty atrocious throughout the entire MLS season. Truth be told, again, the entire team. But you could make the case, right? Okay, maybe that's where you bring in someone like a Tillman, but not a direct comparison if you want to put him in the wing, but he hasn't really played there. Areola is somebody that seems to be on that same level. I feel like Areola or Morris could have been interchangeable.
a little bit.
But yeah, stepping back and looking, I mean, who else do we really have that's like, oh my gosh, this person should have went over Morris from a winger perspective, right? Not expecting him to get a crazy amount of minutes, maybe come in, play some volleyball for the last 10 minutes or chase from people down, get involved in the set pieces and stuff. But yeah, I guess stepping back, my immediate reaction was kind of surprise and like, what the heck? But yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of not the best feeling about Jordan Morris still.
And Sam says here, a big physical winger, a bit of a different style with Morris. Seattle hard to judge because of their injuries this year. So yeah, all good points, Sam. And again, I think, Jordan Morris is going to be a sub, right? In this World Cup. Like we don't anticipate him starting a game in this World Cup unless we're absolutely devastated with injuries, which, let's hope doesn't happen.
And Star Wars Satan, come on, Aaron Long. We see the Aaron Long comments there. And hey guys, if Aaron Long keeps a clean sheet in this first game against Wales, because he'll probably start with Walker, I'll get a Long jersey. Even though he's a free agent.
Oh man. I was gonna say, Pat, you'll have to shotgun a beer on the
I could do that.
Video.
Was my dying fandom to Aaron Long for the rest of the no, but I am rooting for him, right? We're rooting for the team. Just some concerns, right, in what we've seen in his recent form. But hey, this is the big tournament, right? Let's see who can kind of step up. especially being. Are we the youngest team at the World Cup? Is that officially confirmed? Or we have to be one of the youngest.
I think based on the average age of rosters we put out for World Cup qualifying, we are based on this roster and all the other rosters that have come out. I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
It's this. So I'm looking at the release here. It's the second youngest World Cup roster.
Okay. Yeah,
That's what it seems like. It might be in U.S. history though. It's kind of hard to determine by the way they said it here.
And I know some of the rosters haven't been officially released for the other national teams yet.
That's the thing. I don't think all of them have. So
right.
Yeah, deadline is November 14th for all the final rosters. So
okay.
Yeah.
We're
young though.
Yeah. I think again, kind of back to the arguments, right? We're making about other fringe players in the different positions. Nothing too major. I think just again tying it back. I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think the biggest surprise from my end was just Pepe. I just genuinely feel bad for the guy just not being a part of this group and all of the trials and tribulations he's overcome. And he just felt like he was at that, climbing up the mountain again, right? Getting close there to the top, and this is tough.
Yeah, I hate to see it for him. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I'm just disappointed. Yeah. That was the big thing. I was very upset when I first saw that. Again, not to take anything away from Haji Wright, but just think this is a great opportunity for Ricardo that he's going to miss out on now. It's really disappointing. I have a great question for you. I hope it's a great question. I guess you'll I'll get your reaction here. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments as well. But what do you think, Pat? How many points do we need to move out of our group? How many points? When you look at, those teams that we play, the other matchups, right? How many points do you think we need to secure in order to move on to, the knockout round? And feel free to comment below, guys, what you think as well.
It's interesting. I'm assuming Wales, Iran are both going to lose to England. That is my assumption.
Okay. So that gives England 6 points.
Yeah. And I am assuming still England will be number one. But if and in our prediction, right, we said tie, and I think Ken, welcome to the chat here. I think bare minimum, we might be able to get away with 4. That would be absolute minimum. If we come out, beat Wales, England, that's like assuming England lost and Iran draw. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we've gotten out of a group with 4 before.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Pretty sure we did.
You know what? Back in Brazil, I think we got out with 4, right? Because we tied against Portugal.
Germany? Was that the group with Germany?
Lost to Germany in that rainstorm, and then beat Ghana in our first game.
Ghana, tie Portugal? Was that
in the final minutes, remember? Or final seconds, Ronaldo's cross.
Yeah. Gosh, good times. So I would say 4, but from our predictions, I still feel like I think in a perfect world we could get 5. I think we can go in, win against Wales. I'm feeling optimistic from a fan perspective still. England, a draw would be a huge result for us. And then I don't see after that result how we don't draw or win against Iran. Like after that confidence going to the first 2 games. But Iran's sneaky and we could lose to them. It really depends where the chips lie. That first game is so crucial. Or it could be a win-loss draw type of scenario, right? But yeah, I agree with Ken there. I would say how many points we need 4, but I'm hoping we get 5. What are your thoughts, Austin?
Yeah, I agree too. I think 4 would get us out. And again, it might come down to goal differential there. So we'd have to see, how many goals we score against whatever team we beat.
And that's a concern. We don't have a great goal scoring history. So
it's very true. Yeah. But I think 4 is possible. I think 5 would be great. Obviously 6, right? If we could beat Wales and Iran, then I think 6 just,
that would be big.
seals the deal, right? Like that takes all the pressure away from that final game. And obviously going into that game, there'd be pressure, right? If we lose to England, but yeah, I don't know. I think 4 is a safe bet, and we talked about it last time, right? We got to come out against Wales and really put it to push them hard, right? We got to come out and dominate the
Right.
we got to dominate the what's the word I'm looking for? We got to just take it to them in
Dictate
that
the
first
play.
game,
Yeah.
right? Dictate the play, yes. Dominate, dominate possession, dominate, dictate play. You said
Awesome.
it.
Awesome question for you to
Stumbling.
just recapping. So you're saying, let's say, right, England, Iran, right? England wins that game. They're up 3 points, we're on a 0. We beat Wales. Wales and Iran are both on 0. After our England result, let's say we lose. What do you think would happen in that Iran-Wales game? Is that kind of a draw? That seems like a trap game, but I could see one of the other teams pulling it out. And I think that's where that final game would come into play.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you could see a draw in that Iran-Wales game. But again, I think it really comes down to that first game, and seeing what the teams, how the teams come out, right? If Iran's able to keep it close to England, then again, I think it's going to make
if
our
Wales
lives.
has to get a result against England at that last game, that's going to be really tough.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just that bodes very well in our favor, depending on the first out. If we win the first game, I think we're getting out of the group stage. I would feel 99% confident.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I feel pretty good. Obviously, there's still a lot of games left to be played, but after that, 2 games to be exact. But I would like our chances, coming away from that game if we can get 3 points.
And a few more comments here, Austin, before we close out. Sam mentioned outside U.S., England, looking forward to seeing Wales and England. Scott had a great guest on about that game. Interesting. I didn't check out the Scuff podcast, so I'm not sure who the guest was, but that's just a battle. That's just a historic battle, right? Pride in that UK area, in that region. So, I would see England really putting the pressure on, right? Trying to put their best foot forward, or Wales putting their best foot forward, but even with Southgate and his coaching, right, and philosophy, I still think they could really get a 2-3-0 result against Wales. I really do. I think they also find that motivation and drive. And I don't know. Maybe it's biased, the USMNT fan in me, but I just don't have much confidence in the Wales team. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something about Iran scares me. They're sneaky more than Wales. Just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. The only caveat is I think Gareth Bale, which we saw, in the MLS Cup final. Just anytime he's on the field, right? I think he's someone that we're gonna have to be concerned about. And again, he is one person, right? And I think if our team comes out firing that game and really plays together and just communicates, right? Like I feel like that's the biggest thing. When we communicate as a team, we really play well together. And I think if we see that in that first game, we have a great chance of beating them.
Completely
agree.
Agree.
Sam with the hot take.
How funny would that be?
That would be awesome, man. I just talked to an England fan tonight that was like, "Oh, we're getting 9 points." No doubt in my mind, we're getting 9 points. I was like, "All right, man, we'll see."
Dude, I'm telling you, as confident as they are, it's coming home. If anybody comes up against that Brazil team, if you saw that roster drop,
we'll see, man. I'm still, I don't know. Brazil's got to prove it to me. They've, people have said they're so good for a long time now.
So much heartbreak, especially thinking back to that Germany game, that brutal beatdown. Like they're not going to let that happen, man.
All right, let's see him prove it. Let's see him prove it, man.
Let's see it.
A lot of talk right now about Brazil. We'll see. A lot of talk.
Yeah, but guys, we're excited, and I appreciate all the comments here, and it's always fun doing these live streams. And we haven't done one in a minute, so Be on the lookout. With the World Cup on the horizon, it's honestly closer than that. Yeah, we're excited just to dive in more content. Obviously, we have that group stage preview out. We have maybe some other live streams, some other guests coming down the pipeline here, some reactions and how we play and predictions. But yeah, we just appreciate you guys in the comments, and thanks for making these live streams so much fun and engaging.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us tonight, guys. And like Pat said, we're excited for the World Cup coming up, and we're going to be
Let's go.
trying to watch those games different places. We're actually trying to watch a game together, hopefully at some point in December. So
once we make it to the quarters and the semis.
Oh yeah, World Cup final, baby. So yeah, it's exciting. We kick off, like I said, in 12 days. So anticipation is quickly growing.
If you haven't yet, take time off from work, block off some time from classes, wherever you are. Make sure you're watching the World Cup, because guys, it only comes around once every 4 years. So
nothing like it.
We're excited here. We're excited here from the Young Americans Abroad, and let's root on these guys. Austin, we started this channel so many years ago. It's just great to see after that Cougar disaster where we are now. We're sitting here after all these years talking about the World Cup. That's, again, less than 2 weeks away.
Yeah. First player I tweeted about on the Boone Americans account was Haji Wright. So coming full circle.
Wow, is it really?
Today.
Oh, dug up the archives. That's unbelievable. So, we're rooting on our guys, right? The good, the bad, right? Berhalter, we all got to be fans for them now. And
yeah. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us. I think we're going to sign off now. And look for us to be back again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys. Peace.